Huge news from Hollywood. Netflix has agreed to buy Warner Brothers film and streaming businesses for $72 billion. Hello, welcome to Zeekism. The story we've all been covering now for a good few months, if not the past year, has come. Apparently, it's close to fruition, or it's close to completion, should I say, in more ways than one, because as you can see on screen, BBC News, Netflix agrees to buy Warner Brothers film and streaming businesses for $72 billion. That's huge news. Huge news. We all thought Paramount was the front runners. Apparently not. And I'll get on to Paramount in a minute. Netflix has agreed to buy the film and streaming businesses of Warner Brothers Discovery in a major Hollywood deal worth $72 billion. That's about $54 billion. Billion pounds, sorry, for our UK, my fellow UK viewers. The streaming giant emerged as a top bidder for Warner Brothers ahead of rivals Comcast and Paramount Skydance after a drawn-out battle. Warner Brothers owns franchises including Harry Potter and Game of Thrones and the streaming service HBO Max. The takeover is set to lead to a radical reshaping of the US film and media industry, but analysts have warned that it could face resistance from competition authorities. Now that's key. Ted Sarandos, the Netflix co-chief exec, said by combining the library of Warner Brothers shows and movies such as Casablanca with the streaming platform series such as Friends, we can give audiences more of what they love and help define the next century of storytelling. David Zaslav, president and chief exec of Warner Brothers, added the agreement would combine two of the greatest storytelling companies in the world. I'm not sure about that. By coming together with Netflix, we will ensure people everywhere will continue to enjoy the world's most resonant stories for generations to come, he said. The cash and stock deal is worth $27.7 million per Warner Brothers share. $27 per Warner Brothers share, with a total enterprise value, which includes the company's debts and the value of its shares, of about $82.7 billion. The equity value or cash price is $72 billion, as I said before. Both boards of directors from each company unanimously approved the deal. I bet they did. For that price. The acquisition of Warner Brothers is expected to enable Netflix to expand its studio production capacity and increase its investment in original content. We'll come back to that as well. Netflix will complete the takeover after Warner Brothers finalizes its previously announced plans to separate its streaming and studio division from its global networks division into two publicly traded companies next year. Its global networks division includes its cable channels such as CNN, which is going to get bombed, as well as its sports brands and free-to-air channels in Europe. Pablo Pescatore, apologies if that's wrong, founder and technology media telecom analyst at PP Foresight, and said the sale was a huge statement of intent and underlines Netflix's aspirations to be a global leader in the new world order of streaming, if they're not already. but he warned, with the surprising move made sense for Warner Brothers, it would provide a headache for Netflix. This is uncharted waters and previous big media acquisitions have been poorly executed if and once approved. Netflix will need to have a razor-sharp focus on integration and execution. While the agreed deal is part of Warner Brothers' business, rival Paramount had tabled the bid to buy the whole company, including its cable networks, in October. Warner Brothers rejected this move before putting itself up for sale. Ahead of Friday's announcement, Emma Wall, chief investment strategist at Hargreaves Lansdown, said the US competition regulator was likely to get involved, whoever the winner was. This will create a global mega power in broadcast entertainment, which the regulator will want to look at. Tom Harrington, head of television at Enders Analysis, said it was hard to gauge whether the deal would win regulatory approval, but if it went through, it would have a massive impact on cinema. Were it to go through, it would reorient Hollywood, with a streamer acquiring a business much of which it's existentially the antithesis of. Netflix has always had some limited use for the cinema, but generally its offering undermines it. Mr. Harrington said there was likely to be big reductions in television and film output from a merged entity, which would lead to resistance to the move from parts of Hollywood and relevant unions. HBO, the creative jewel, would be terribly exposed within Netflix, although it has survived difficult owners for a lot of its existence. For consumers, Mr. Harrington said a merger would likely lead to higher costs. Netflix would get more expensive. It is definitely going to get more expensive. And even though HBO Max would be shuttered, become non-essential, the greater penetration of Netflix households would likely mean an increase in total overall subscription revenues. We'll pause for thought there. This is a concerning merger, if I'm honest, or an acquisition. Netflix hates the cinema. It hates the cinema. Its whole entire business model loathes the cinema. They resent having to put films in cinema. And it's interesting because what this will mean for cinemas going forward, obviously it's terrible news because Netflix isn't going to want to put a great deal of their films in cinemas. Look, you get into the thing with James Cameron recently saying Netflix films shouldn't be considered for Oscars because they're not in cinemas enough time. I sort of agree with that personally. I know someone went against it. Some actor, I think Joel Edgerton, fought back on that and said, well, look, some actors wouldn't get opportunities if it wasn't for the streamers. Again, I agree with that. So it's a give and take. But ultimately, as a cinema fan and a cinema goer, this is concerning because Netflix isn't going to want to put a vast majority of their jewels, as they describe them, in cinemas going forward. It's going to want to put less in. The other interesting thing is what it means for HBO Max. That's assuming that's going to get folded into Netflix. Netflix is so huge. I think what Netflix is going to have to do, and this is just speculation on my part, what they're going to start to have to do is do what Prime are doing and Disney Plus in having subsections, more clearly labeled subsections within the platform to allow you to access HBO Max content, for example, if that's going to be the way they fold it in. So the whole app is going to have to change in terms of what they offer. The price is definitely going to go up as a result of this merger because they have to pay for the merger in some form. It always falls on the consumer. It also means less choice. Warner Brothers obviously would dictate their creative. Netflix would dictate their creative, meaning the consumer would be spoilt for choice in terms of having an offering. Now, if you're folding things in, I felt the same way when Disney bought Fox, to be fair. You're getting less competition now because they're all under one umbrella, or under less umbrellas, should I say. So at the moment, we've got Paramount, we've got Netflix, we've got Disney, and we've got Prime. That seems to be the four still going, and with some smaller independent companies, studios, should I say, releasing content as well. But those are the big ones, and even Paramount is sort of suspect being in that, but only because they've got backing. Now, speaking of Paramount, before this had come out, had written a complaint. Paramount, who had used, well, speculatively, were linked with the government in America in terms of being able to purchase, Skydance being able to purchase Paramount earlier this year. Now, they were sort of, I would imagine, hoping for similar practices when they were trying to buy Warner Brothers. We all thought that was a done deal when that was going to happen. I sort of speculated that was going to happen before the end of the year as well, earlier in the summer. I mean, this is out of nowhere. Netflix is coming and gazumped them. And they're not happy about it. In a notable turn for the sale of the Warner Bros. Empire, David Ellison's Paramount has issued a letter to the board of the studio it hopes to acquire. This was yesterday, by the way, questioning if the David Zaslav-led company is overseeing a tilted and unfair process. Warner Bros. Discovery lawyers have replied to the letter in a note viewed by The Hollywood Reporter, deflecting concerns and saying, please be assured the Warner Bros. Discovery Board attends to its fiduciary, I think that's how they're spelled, so obligations with the utmost care, and that they have fully and robustly complied with them and will continue to do so. The note from Paramount, reportedly sent via its attorneys at Quinn Emanuel, they sound posh, seems to suggest that it believes Netflix has been receiving more favourable treatment so far in the bidding process. Second round bids to acquire Warner Bros. Discovery were due on December the 1st, and Paramount, Comcast and Netflix have all upped the ante to make offers after initial bids were collected November 20th. Warners have outlined that it would like to have a plan in place for a sale or a split of the company by the end of the year. Obviously, that's transpired the day later after this report was out. Netflix is seen as interested in acquiring the studio, which it has, and streaming businesses, the Warner Brothers Studio, HBO, and HBO Max, whereas Paramount is aiming for an outright acquisition that includes the cable channels division with TNT, TBS, CNN, HGTV, and the Food Network as well. Comcast's latest bid would see it spin out the NBC Universal into Warner Brothers Discovery in what would likely be a stock-heavy transaction. Several US media outlets have reported on the enthusiasm by Warner Brothers Discovery management for a transaction with Netflix, and on statements by management that a transaction between WBD and Netflix would be a slam dunk, while also referring to Paramount's bid in a negative light. Read the Paramount letter, which CNBC published in full. Additional reporting since the submission of revised bids on December the 1st has indicated that Warner Brothers Discovery's board has really warmed to a transaction with Netflix due to the chemistry between Warner Brothers Discovery management and Netflix management. Which is interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that they got on better with Netflix. There's got to be a pre-existing relationship there. I don't know, but I'm just guessing. Regulatory concerns appear to be a critical factor in any potential deal, and this is where they're going to have to go to the FCC, isn't it, for approval for this, which is obviously government mandated, and we know Skydance, who owns Paramount, is linked very, very favorably with the current administration in America. I'm trying to remove keywords because YouTube seems to be really funny about the current president of the United States. Paramount reportedly upped its potential breakup fee to $5 billion in its latest offer, underscoring that it believes it has the best path to get it through regulators, though the letter to WBD suggested that European Union regulators may be taking a tougher stand on the deal. That's interesting. So the letter to WBD suggested that EU regulators may be taking a tougher stand on the deal with Paramount. That's interesting. A mega deal by Ellison's Paramount to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery in whole would not come without risk. A Bank of America research team led by Jessica Rafe Ehrlich wrote on November 26th, Paramount Skydance is already levered at nearly 3.5 times prior to funding a $70 billion to $75 billion equity purchase price and assuming a $25.6 billion in WBD net debt as of late next year. Yeah, WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery is in quite a bit of debt. So they've got to take that on. So Netflix, obviously, with all the money in the world, can acquire that with taking that debt on as well. Paramount is in massive debt through purchasing... Skydance is in massive debt through purchasing Paramount. They would have to load that up as well. The Paramount bid for Warner Brothers is backed, in part by the assumption that Oracle founder Larry Ellison, net worth of $266 billion, he's small change, would be a backstop in a deal to help boost his son's bid. David Ellison is only months removed from closing an $8 billion merger of his Skydance Media with Paramount in August, and had been seen as a saviour of that studio at the time, in the sense that it kept Paramount as an independent major. Now, as Ellison looks to consolidate the industry further, that shine on his brand appears to be coming off. Paramount's letter also appeared to suggest that Warner Brothers management may be finding more favourable options for post-sale employment with other suitors. Paramount has a credible basis to believe that the sales process has been tainted by management conflicts, including certain members of management's potential personal interest in post-transaction roles, the letter read. Whilst no names were named, it's understood that Zaslav isn't necessarily looking to exit his C-suite perch, and chatter is centered on what role he may have at a post-transaction combo company. So he wanted obviously to stay on with whatever purchase went on. That's probably why Netflix have got the merger. Paramount, in its earlier conversation with WBD, offered Zaslav a co-CEO and co-chairman position, though it's not clear what exactly that would entail. That's probably not concrete for him. Comcast, meanwhile, has proposed a deal that would merge NBC Universal with WBD, and we've talked about that as well already. So, I think a big factor that's to consider off the back of this is the loss of jobs. And there are going to be some redundancies, even just letting go of talent, because Netflix already has a working financed film studio division. They're obviously going to increase that by increasing the Warner Brothers assets, but whenever something's bought, whenever companies merge, there are losses because they look to streamline workforce. That's going to happen here, regardless of what we think. Is it going to be more work? No, it's going to be less. There's less work going to be, less things are going to be made. That's just the reality of it. It's not going to increase production on things. It's going to decrease. So the interest will be whether it goes through the regulator in America, because, like you said, it's going to be losing. The unemployment numbers will go up as a result of this because jobs will be lost. It's not going to increase work within Netflix circles because Netflix is very international anyway. In fact, that might have been a sort of cherry on the cake for them. The fact Warner Brothers, here in the UK, Warner Brothers has a few assets here, actually, to be fair. They've got a working studio somewhere, I think just outside London area. They've also got a couple of assets in terms of related to Harry Potter, which they set up, but they are working studios should they want to be converted back. One's currently a sort of Harry Potter tour in, I can't remember the name where it is, but Leavesden. And so, yeah, there are assets, and no doubt Warner Brothers have got presence in Saudi Arabia, and they've got a presence in the Middle East quite a bit. I think in Australia they've got a studio. I could be wrong in that. So yeah, they've got assets all over the world that they're going to now acquire, probably utilize, but most likely probably sell off. That's the reality. They're probably going to sell it off to try and fund part of this merger. The back catalogue is obviously what they really want. Warner Brothers have been a studio operational for over 100 years. There's a ton of content. What it means for HBO Max is probably closure. That's going to be folded into Netflix in some form. I would imagine they would keep the HBO brand because there's value to it. I'm not sure. Bar Warner Brothers, maybe they have a Warner Brothers section. I don't know, but yeah, that's a decision Netflix is going to be having to make soon. I'm a wrestling fan, so when Netflix got the deal for global rights of WWE, they didn't exactly fold it in seamlessly. There's no wrestling section on Netflix. They just folded it into their catalog, and it's just there. There's no sports section either on Netflix. Still, even though they're showing more sports than just wrestling. There's boxing on there. There's football. There's other stuff, but there's no sports section. Maybe this would entice them to do that. Start really segmenting their categories more so. I don't know. It's a decision they're going to have to make, but ultimately, I think, yes, we're going to be hitting the pocket because us who subscribe to Netflix, we're going to have the prices are going to go up within the next 6 months, I would imagine, as a result of this. When they announce, because they've only just announced in the last month that we in the UK and other international markets will be getting HBO Max in the new year, that's seemingly going to go the way of the dogs there, because that's not going to happen now because Netflix is going to buy the back catalogue. It's interesting that they mentioned Friends. Friends is is about to leave, ironically, the distribution within Netflix. So obviously that will be renewed unless they've signed an already existing deal with other distributors. It's interesting. There's lots of business practices. Some people call it boring. I find it really interesting, to be honest. So yeah, I think there's more negatives than positives out of this. I don't see a lot of positives. It's just interesting, and it is a bit of a sad day where one of the classic film studios within Hollywood circles is now being purchased by. And I felt the same way when MGM went to Amazon. There's more negatives than positives here, and it is a shame. I mean, look at MGM. It's just something on Prime. Like I said, the Bond films are probably the jewel of that crown. They're just on Prime when they decide they want to be on there, and they've already. What did they try to do? First thing they did, they censored all the posters. Took all the guns out of the posters. So yeah, I see Netflix maybe doing something similar, but we'll see. What do you think about this? This is huge news. Big day in film studio history. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please leave a like or subscribe on the channel, and I'll speak to you next time. Thank you so much. Bye bye.